Crimson Desert is just around the corner. And honestly, this game looks like it could become one of the best open world games ever made. And the reason people are getting so excited is not just because of the trailers. We now have impressions from people who have actually played the game, and on top of that, Digital Foundry recently dropped a 30-minute gameplay analysis running on the PS5 Pro. So now, for the first time, we're starting to get a much clearer picture of just how ambitious this game really is. What really stands out from all of these early impressions is the sheer scale of the world. And I don't just mean big in the usual open world sense. A lot of games can give you a huge map, but once you start exploring, it ends up feeling empty or repetitive. Crimson Desert, from what people are saying, sounds very different. One person reportedly played the game for around 40 minutes and still didn't fully cover the first region. That alone says a lot. If that turns out to be accurate, then this isn't just a giant map thrown together for the sake of size. It sounds like each region is dense, layered, and full of things to discover. That's probably the most exciting part about all of this. Players aren't just talking about the map being large, they're talking about how packed it feels. Instead of huge stretches of empty land with very little going on, the world apparently feels rich with activities, secrets, hidden paths, and unique encounters. That's a massive difference, because in an open world game, size only matters if the world actually gives you a reason to explore it. And right now, Crimson Desert is sounding like the kind of game that constantly rewards your curiosity. Another detail that really caught my attention is what was said about traversal and exploration. According to impressions that have been shared, the world is so massive and varied that it reportedly took John Lineman from Digital Foundry around 4 hours of travel and exploration just to get from the opening village to the far end of the desert. That is wild. And what makes that even more interesting is that he apparently said he hasn't felt this same urge to explore a game world since Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. That is not a comparison people make lightly. Those are two of the most respected open world games ever made when it comes to discovery and exploration. So hearing Crimson Desert mentioned in the same breath is a huge compliment. And the more you hear from early previews, the more exploration seems like one of the game's strongest features. A lot of impressions describe players constantly finding dungeon-like areas scattered throughout the world. These aren't just random copy and paste caves either. Apparently, many of them have unique loot, different enemy encounters, and their own distinct layout or atmosphere. That matters a lot, because one of the biggest problems in many open world games is repetition. You start seeing the same outpost, the same cave, the same structure over and over again with only tiny changes. But with Crimson Desert, the impression so far is that many areas feel handcrafted and distinct from one another. There also seems to be a major focus on vertical exploration. Players have been mentioning cliffs, ruins, caves, hidden paths, and layered environments that go above and below the main landscape. That instantly makes the world more interesting. A good open world isn't just wide, it also needs depth. When you can climb higher, descend into hidden places, and discover routes that aren't obvious at first glance, exploration becomes much more rewarding. It sounds like Crimson Desert wants players to feel like there is always something tucked away around the next corner, whether it's a hidden path, a secret area, or a valuable reward. Enemy variety is another thing that keeps coming up in discussions from people who played the game. And this is a really important point because combat can get stale very quickly in a large open world RPG if you're constantly fighting the same handful of enemy types over and over again. But according to early impressions, Crimson Desert features a massive range of enemies across its world with different behaviors and different ways of fighting. That means players may actually need to adapt depending on what they're facing, instead of just using the exact same strategy every time. If that variety stays fresh over the course of many hours, it could make the combat feel much more engaging than a lot of other open world games. Some of the comparisons people are throwing around make this sound even more impressive. The way they describe it, Crimson Desert seems to combine the kind of enemy variety and dungeon discovery you would expect from a huge RPG, while still delivering the cinematic spectacle and physics-driven combat that the trailers have already shown off. And that combination is a big reason why the game feels so promising. It's not trying to be just one thing. It looks like it wants to blend scale, action, exploration, and immersion into one complete package. Speaking of immersion, the atmosphere of the world is apparently another major highlight. Based on the impressions being shared, the game's ambient music and sound design play a huge role in making exploration feel special. There are moments where the world becomes quiet, with only soft music playing while you move through the environment, giving you this calm, almost peaceful feeling before the action starts up again. That kind of pacing is important. It gives the world room to breathe. It makes exploration feel relaxing and immersive instead of just constantly overwhelming the player with noise and action. Nighttime also seems to completely transform the tone of the world. And this is something I love hearing because in many games, night is basically just the daytime version with the brightness turned down. But here, some impressions suggest that certain areas become genuinely dark at night, changing the mood and even affecting how you navigate. That makes the world feel more believable and more dynamic. It means time of day isn't just a visual effect, it actually changes how the game feels. The scale of the world itself is another thing that players keep highlighting, and some of the comparisons are honestly pretty crazy. One person described traveling through the world as reminding them of the sense of scale in Shadow of the Colossus, where the landscapes feel enormous and at times almost lonely. That's a very specific kind of feeling, and it's not something every game can capture. At the same time, the environmental detail and immersion reportedly give off a vibe similar to Red Dead Redemption 2, where the world feels alive and full of small details happening around you. If Crimson Desert can really pull off both of those things, massive scale and dense environmental detail, then that's going to be something very special. Now let's talk about performance, because we also recently got more information on how the game is running on console hardware, specifically the PlayStation 5 Pro. According to the near final build that was tested, the game includes 3 graphical modes. There's a performance mode targeting 60 frames per second at 1080p, a balance mode targeting 40 frames per second at 1440p, and a quality mode targeting 30 frames per second at full 40K. All of these modes reportedly include ray tracing features including reflections, which is honestly very impressive considering the scale and visual quality of the world. The performance mode seems especially interesting because it uses Sony's AI upscaling technology to push the image closer to 4K while still targeting a smoother frame rate. And from what we've seen so far, the game appears to be running surprisingly well, especially for something this visually ambitious. Of course, we'll still need to wait for the final release to know exactly how stable these modes are, but at least right now, the technical side of the game is looking pretty promising. As for PC, that's where things get even more interesting for me personally. I've got an RTX 4070 Super with 12 GB of RAM, so I'm really curious to see how Crimson Desert performs on that setup. I'm guessing my PC should be able to handle the game pretty well, maybe somewhere around 50 to 60 FPS depending on the settings and optimization. But of course, a lot of that will come down to how well the PC version is optimized at launch, because we all know that can make or break the experience. And that's really the big question now. Crimson Desert looks incredible, the world sounds massive and full of discovery, the combat seems varied, and the atmosphere appears to be one of the game's strongest elements. If the final version delivers on everything people are praising right now, this could easily become one of the biggest open world games in recent years, and maybe even one of the best. So now I want to hear from you. What hardware are you planning to play Crimson Desert on? Are you a PC player, or are you picking it up on console? And if you're on PC, do you think your setup will be able to run it smoothly? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more news and updates on Crimson Desert, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.